So last week we had a great discussion about the possible changes coming to the next edition of Dungeons & Dragons when Wizards of the Coast decides to finally launch Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition. And we had a lot of really great comments in what I describe as a wave of suggestions from all of you, or y'all for my fellow Texans. And I must say, you guys were incredibly supportive for the vision that I had for a potential new version of D&D. And not that it matters in the slightest, but the like-dislike ratio was proof that you felt similarly about our beloved game. After reading through as many of the 1,500 plus comments I got in a week and suggestions, today I want to pick up where I left off for those changes that I would like to see personally in a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition follow-up, as we'll talk about some of the suggestions as well that you guys had. Once again, my opinions are subjective, so of course everything I say is basically fact, and to disagree with me in any form proves that you are simple players and not big-brain dungeon masters like yours truly. My words are final and should be treated with reverence, clearly. Oh yeah, once again, Taking 20 Discord. Join it. It's awesome. See you over there. Bye. So right out of the gate, I think we were a little kind to players last week, and that's probably why you guys enjoy the video so much. I think it's only fair to give a little, then take a little, as the first change I would like to see in a Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition is a small overhaul to the death and dying mechanics. I can give credit where credit is due. The D&D 5e design team had a vision in mind to simplify the chaos of dropping to 0 only or going below 0 with negative hit points or whatever other systems past or present might do to handle dying. The death save mechanic is a good one, but it needs a little tweaking as is before it can just be copy-pasted into the next edition of D&D. The only real issue I have with it is that yo-yo effect. If you are at 0, you're lying on the ground dying, and if you have 1 hit point, you spring back up with half your movement speed and then attack in the same round like nothing happened. In fact, as I think about it, just this, literally this last Tuesday during my patron game, I had a paladin player use 1 point of lay on hands to get the cleric back up, and he popped up and cast 2 spells, Spiritual Weapon and Sacred Flame, which is perfectly rules as written. I mean, yeah, that's a problem. With the enemy unable to AoE and the paladin able to put just 1 point of healing into a party member over and over again if they wanted, this is cheesy and a little broken. Now, I've seen plenty of dungeon masters implement their own versions of these rules, their own house rules, and they're all over the place. Death save fails stay with you until a long rest. Pretty good. Levels of exhaustion, I've heard that. That's pretty good. Moving the downed player in initiative, okay, fine. Pathfinder 2e has a growing death save system that I kind of like a lot, as it's finite. Losing your action on your first turn back, and even only allowing a player to stand and take the dodge action as they gain their bearings from their near-death experience, and so on. Lot of really good ideas floating around out there. And as far as I'm concerned, you really could just take your pick of what works for you. What I think should stay is the hard floor of 0. And I really like the death save mechanic of some sort. That half mechanic is pretty solid. Build from that and add small tweaks into 6th edition, and the fights will immediately feel more dramatic. As is, the dying mechanics are maybe a little cheesy. And by the way, if your table uses a house rule that I didn't mention, let me know what you guys do down below. I currently run rules as written, personally, I just do, but I'm curious to see what the most common dying house rule is. I'm betting it's probably exhaustion, but what do you guys use? Next, the next change is going to have my fellow casters out there screaming that I just want to kill all my PCs, even though what I'm suggesting clearly cuts both ways for the PCs and for the NPCs and monsters, and that's to blend Attack of Opportunity with D&D 5e's Opportunity Attack. I'm going to tell you now, of all the things I'm passionate about in design, this is the hill I am ready to die on. It is fair to say that I've played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, okay? I've mentioned that before, that I used to play Dungeons & Dragons miniatures, and I ended up, as a highly ranked player, yada yada, in Texas, who cares? And D&D minis used 3rd edition attacks of opportunity, as well as Pathfinder, which of course I also played a ton of. Additionally, I've played a lot of 5th edition, just like most of you out there. And at first, I hated the opportunity attack system. I have been critical of it pretty much since day one. Having an enemy knock you down, and then on your turn, you just stand up like nothing happened and swing your axe is lame. It is. It's super lame. And watching players just swing around enemies to gain the optional flanking rule, which is for advantage, really bothered me at first. Then I, of course, implemented my own house rule for flanking that I'm really not going to get into right now in this video. But I've put a lot of thought into this, and I will fully face criticisms if need be. I'm confident that what Dungeons & Dragons 6e needs to do is to blend 3rd and 5th edition here. For 5e, I'd keep the movement changes of opportunity attacks. Additionally, I think imposing disadvantage on non-magical range attacks should stay as well. There's some really good core bones there. Those need to stay. Now, I then take the attack of opportunity, not to be confused with opportunity attack rules from 3rd edition, and implement the 5-foot step, maybe that one. The attack of opportunity on casting a spell right in the face of an opponent trying to kill you with a sword, interacting with an object, and so on. Yes, I think that if you move over to a downed ally and then lift their head to pour a healing potion into their mouth, the gargoyle just standing over you, silently watching and waiting for their turn again, should have some kind of reaction there. If an opponent can now attack you with a reaction when you stand up right next to them with half your movement to cast 2 spells, that choice now becomes far more intriguing. Maybe you take the dodge action and stand up with no opportunity attack and try to move half your movement away. Or maybe you risk it and you fire off your 2 spells, but you might go right back down before you cast them. In the last video, several people commented on the magic items versus all classes are basically wizards now, and pointed to the issues of balancing martials and casters. Casters will always be stronger than martials at late levels, but not allowing them to stand right next to the Merilith and cast banishment without any reaction from the huge demon with 6 swords is a step in the right direction for achieving that balance. On the other hand, the changes to 5e that took away a lot of the burdens of moving in combat, specifically within a threatened space, is a good change to keep the game from bogging down. That's why I believe the best version of combat movement is not 5e or 3rd edition, but rather a blend of the two. If the designers can marry these 2 editions for a D&D 6e, I think they could create the foundation for more exciting game elements and get more of those flourishes and dashes in combat. The next change I'd like to see in a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons is to have the designers open up the playbook a little and allow the advantage-disadvantage system a chance to breathe with small bonuses and penalties. Small, guys, I mean very small. The fact is, D&D 5e already has ways to compound advantage-disadvantage with numerical bonuses. You could have a +1 sword and still get advantage on an attack. You could fire off an arrow at disadvantage with a D4 penalty subtracting from the shot from a Bane spell, and an additional cover penalty on top of that. Or you could roll an ability check with guidance and advantage, or make a save against a poison effect at advantage and add a D4 to the result for bless. Not even talking about paladin auras. Yeah. I'm not saying go nuts with modifiers, okay? I don't want that type of game, but to say that D&D 5e only uses advantage-disadvantage and that adding in any simple bonuses during design will break everything immediately is simply wrong. I've ran the math, others have ran the math, it's already in the game, guys. So open up the design playbook. Not everything needs to be advantage and disadvantage. Sometimes A simple +1 or +2 is the correct choice. If people find ways to stack advantage and a +1 modifier, guess what? Let them do it. Also, as a quick aside, small numbers, 1, 2, and 3 added or subtracted only. We don't need +27 to hit like, some other games out there. The next thing I'd like to see is less AoE choose your target spells and spell-like abilities. I think if you cast your spell, or basically a spell with the spell-like ability, in the heat of combat, at a group of allies and enemies all moving and whirling and swirling engaged in deadly melee, thinking that you can simply pick out your friends, and again, rules is written, you could do this with a demon in your face in 5e. Yeah, that's immersion breaking and a little absurd. If you cast Fireball, everyone makes a save. Fairy Fire the same way, but suddenly channels and spells like Slow just start letting you hand pick all of the targets or lack of targets. I think these abilities are too forgiving, really without needing to be. Like, the players can't possibly have the foresight of moving into a better position before casting their spell or using their ability. I get it. But then your slow spell won't hit all of the bad guys you need to hit without forcing you to hit your allies too to save, right? Yeah, right. That's exactly the point. That's called strategic positioning. I will say that this is a minor change I'd like to see because frankly, I did a little bit of research while making this video and there isn't 10,000 of these out there in 5e, but still it's enough to have the design team look at them from that design standpoint and ask, why is this in the game? And does it make the game portion better or worse? I think it's obvious. The next change I would like to see is once again for the players, and that's to make the capstones special. Yes, I know I'm talking about high-level gameplay here. Yes, I'm talking about buffing players even more at this level, but let's be candid. Some of the capstones in D&D 5e are incredibly dull and seem to lack any imagination to make the epic reward feel that they should be. I mean, have you seen the Wizard's capstone signature spells? Oh, sweet. I get 2 more level 3 spells once a day. Woo! It's hard to even look at how terrible the Bard's capstone of, well, if you don't have any inspirations left and you roll initiative, you gain 1 back is. Rework the capstones as part of your new game for 6th edition D&D and make these feel epic, like we want to achieve 20 full levels in a class without, dipping for hexblade. Oh yeah, the next change I'd like to see in 6th edition is to unbreak hexblade. Seriously, don't even think about a new edition of D&D without hitting the hexblade with a huge nerf bat. You can totally keep this class and its flavors without letting every single charisma class immediately benefit from 1 level of a hexblade dip. It can't just slide into Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition without an overhaul. Even if that overhaul is simply giving them their superpowers at level 3 instead of immediately giving them that at level 1. And finally, I wanted to save the last change I personally want to see in D&D 6e for this last spot because I know it's gonna make me seem like all I want to do is terrorize my players. It is, but I promise that's not true. With Dungeons & Dragons 6th edition, I'd like to see the design team make monsters feel deadlier and speed up combat. There is an inherent and obvious issue with Dungeons & Dragons 5e that big scary monsters usually end up being pushovers. And I'm being generous with the term pushover. Candy ass is probably more appropriate. It's funny, I was taking my monthly patron one-on-one meetings and I had a patron talk about how they had just bought the Matt Mercer book, their words, not mine, and how they threw a CR 17 Frostworm at their level 7 party. So I asked how it went, and they said the party ran over the encounter. It was funny because I have had very similar experience in Out of the Abyss with 2 CR 15 Purple Worms and a level 9 party. Okay, very small spoilers coming in for Icewind Dale, heads up. But this last week, I ran Shardolin Berserkers and Cold Light Walkers for my group. The Berserker is a CR4. A handful of CR4 NPCs stacked together has the chance to be an okay encounter for a group of level 5 adventurers. Except these CR4s hit for a whopping, get this, 1d8 plus 3 damage. Now, I mean, they do get to attack 3 times recklessly, but they still only swing at a +5 modifier for 7 damage on average per swing and a DC 13 poison condition. That's really pathetic. If I stuck a CR4 Berserker up against a party of level 2 adventurers, I promise they'd wipe the floor with him. The Cold Light Walker hits pretty decent with its Cold Ray for a solid 4d10 plus 3 at just a CR5. Now that is some damage. Except, it's a ranged spell attack, so disadvantage if the party touches the thing. And it has a blistering lava hot +3 modifier to hit for said attack. +3 to hit. The CR9 Bone Devil hits for 1d8 plus 4 slashing. CR9, the huge size tree at CR9 hits for an amazing 3d6 plus 6 on a 16 damage average. 16 damage, 2 hits, 2 slams at CR9. Do you know how many hit points just a 4-person party has by level 5 even? Do you know how much a cleric could heal with level 3 spell slots at that point? The list goes on and on, but the issue is worse because so many NPCs feel like the design team made up for their subpar damage output by giving out more and more hit points to these things. So many of the monsters in the book that should be terrifying, like the huge-sized hill giant or a chimera or a hydra, all feel like they're just punching bags that might sting you back a little bit if they happen to roll a natural 23 straight times. Now, I'll admit, some of the caster types can definitely feel scary at times. But the brutes need to be completely reworked in a new edition of D&D. I'd like to see scary, big, terrifying monsters feel just that. Big and scary. I want combat to feel faster and scarier. If you want them to hit harder, I'm okay with reducing their average hit points by 15%. Who cares? These are fights to the death, and I personally want them to feel that way. Now, as a design standpoint, I personally, as a dungeon master, I don't care for the 3 to 4 combats on an average adventuring day. I don't like to tell stories like that for my personal playstyle. I'd much rather have deadly encounters that the party can react to and avoid completely with clever roleplay or quick thinking. Maybe they bargain or indenture themselves or threaten their potential opponent or outwit them and stall them until their allies can arrive, and so on. And when things do come to a blow in my games, I want it to feel like it should mean something, not just, oh, well, this is your 3rd fight and, the first couple fights were really just to get your resources down. That doesn't fit my playstyle. Now also, sometimes, not always, sometimes the players just want to kill evil orcs, and that's perfectly okay too, to have those extra encounters. But I think there is a problem in design when a CR5 creature is firing off rays at a +3 modifier. Miss. While the party hacks through a huge pool of hit points. That doesn't excite anyone at the table. So I'd like to see punchier, scary monsters with much better initiative scores, with much better actions in mortal combat to the death, and easier to kill. More hit points isn't more balanced, in my opinion. I do have a few more small things I'd like to see go, like Lucky and Sentinel, and maybe some stuff I'd like to see what they could do with it if they really tried to look at things that may even be working for 5e. But you guys also had a lot of really interesting ideas, some of which I may not personally agree with, but let's take a couple of minutes and look at a few of your suggestions. One suggestion I saw a few times was tying an attunement system to proficiency. Great idea. I've seen this before, and it was probably my first instinct, but I don't get to say everything that I want to in a short video. Cutting and editing down is just part of the process, and I wanted to use that as a part of my pitch for magical class abilities too. So, love this idea, not married to it quite yet, but it could be a part of the process for making magic feel a little bit more special in 6e and giving people more magic items. Okay, here's one, armor class. Several people wanted to get rid of the AC system completely. That's such a Texas thing. They wanted to get rid of AC and move to a damage reduction system. And I'm just gonna say candidly here, I don't agree with this. As someone who plays Warhammer 40k now, making 4 rolls to try to see if you even actually dealt damage is not something that I want in my D&D. Could AC be overhauled a bit? Yeah, of course. My brother rants about it constantly, about how level 1 adventurers have, 18, 19 AC or whatever with shields, but I don't see big problems with it personally. Maybe a little rebalancing, fine. But I don't want anything more than that, and I certainly don't want, convoluted, I hit you, but do I actually deal damage with the damage reduction? I don't want that, personally. Oh, here's another really good one, initiative. Several people are talking about dumping initiative. And oh boy, do I have thoughts. First off, I'm not dismissing this right away. I've played in games like Wrath and Glory where the players go and then the DM goes and then a player goes and back and forth. And to be honest, it was fun. It would also solve problems like big bad evil boss rolling a 3 and then having 5 party members go first. And then by the time they go, the boss is already at a point where they need to basically retreat before they even got to do anything. It would also work for the players too, a bit where they could position how they need to set up their attacks better, almost as if they were actively, communicating in a battle or something. But I don't know. As someone who rails against alignment for continuing to be irrelevant in every game of D&D, yet still being included because it's a part of the game or whatever, I don't know. I think removing initiative like that would be a little bit like ripping out a teeny tiny bit of what makes D&D D&D. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not convinced either way. Here's another one where I'm going to walk along the fence, and that's skills. You guys talked a lot about skills. Yes, I think it's lame that the druid can sleight of hand every bit as good as the rogue. Yes, it's weird that skills never progress really all the way from level 1 to 20, or that you don't truly pick up more skills. But I do not want to go back to 3.5 for skills, and I'm a 3rd edition player. I just don't. Neither is perfect, but 5e is far more tolerable for a newbie standpoint than 3.5 by a mile. So full disclosure, I must also say for the system that I am currently writing and working on, the first thing that I tackled was action economy and then skills. And I do have the skills chapter almost completely written already for playtesting, and I'm very pleased with it. But I'd like to see what you guys think about a potential skill set in D&D 6e. No reason or anything, no agenda. Another great suggestion I saw from a few people is to cut out the cross-spell lists. In essence, stop giving classes just pick from the wizard list or pick from the sorcerer list. This would be to give casters a more individualistic feel. And I gotta say, I think that's a really great suggestion and one that I can firmly get behind. I dig that. That's a cool idea. And finally, 1 or 2 people mentioned something that I can't explain why, but I completely agree with, and that's dumping passive perception checks. On the surface, I have no issue with passive skill checks, but man, I hate using passive perception. Something about making a player roll, or even rolling their check for them secretly in Fantasy Grounds, which I love to use, is so much more satisfying than the monster rolled an 18, and that beats all of your checks passively, or the monster rolled the 10 and all of you just immediately easily spot them. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it, but it's true. Let's get rid of passive perception. I don't know why. Can't explain it. I don't like it. Oh yeah. And one final change. Jeremy, if you watch this, help a brother out, man. 6th edition needs taking 20 back. It just makes sense. All right, so now I'm gonna pass it over to you guys in the community. I know we already had a lot of suggestions on the first video. I imagine that you guys are gonna have quite a bit of feedback here already for me on the new stuff that I talked about. So I wanna ask you guys, what did I get wrong in this part 2? What are the rules changes that I'm suggesting that you guys hate and you think I'm a big dumb idiot that needs to never talk again? What are the ones you really like? Let me know down below. I want to give a massive thank you to all of the incredible patrons out there. Thank you guys so much. It's because of you that I get to do this, and for that I am incredibly grateful. If you guys like what I do here, you want to snag some rewards for yourself, welcomeadventures.com is a great way to support the channel, snag some rewards, support the channel, get some rewards, mostly support the channel. I had to replace the AC today. It was expensive. It was really expensive. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games, or maybe you're learning to love role-playing games as much as I do, I'd love to have you subscribe. I put out videos on GM tips, player tips, tutorials, more stuff talking about game mechanics and design. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, hit the subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.